Chances to stop an accused killer. Ronnie Hyde remains in jail in the murder of 16-year-old Fred Laster. His dismembered body was found in a dumpster in the 1990s. Our Julia Janae lays out the missed opportunities to bring Hyde to justice sooner.
At least 4,000 documents released this week. Our investigative team has been digging into them, and we found for the first time released to the public that the victim in this case, Fred Laster, was actually the foster child to Ronnie Hyde. Also that he claimed Laster and his siblings on his IRS tax forms, and that he's being investigated, linking him possibly to other local child disappearances, but no connection has been made. But what these documents also reveal is just how much access Hyde had to children. The case against Ronnie Hyde has sent investigators combing through decades of his life. The now 61-year-old was a licensed counselor, and documents released Friday show he spent hours counseling preteens at Callahan Middle School. On a resume, Hyde's counseling experience included churches, youth organizations, and interest in being a relaxation expert on a job application at a youth nudist camp that appears to be now closed.
A lot of times he had young boys with him.
Last year, a relative of Hyde talked to First Coast News about his past.
He would just say he would be counseling them, and they were in bad relationships with their parents, and that's how they hooked up.
Hyde also had counseling access to prisoners. Detectives found accusations from an inmate claiming Hyde had sexual encounters with prisoners in his office. Detectives weren't able to find if that claim was ever investigated. But what was investigated, the disappearance of Fred Laster. In police reports, the teenager's siblings in '94 tell police Hyde was the last one who saw their brother alive. But there's no mention in the thousands of pages if Hyde was ever directly questioned. Years later, Hyde would be red flagged in a Canadian child porn sting called Operation Spade. His name was one of hundreds in several countries, and Hyde was never arrested. Not until March of 2017, when detectives would piece together the counselor's connection to Fred Laster, his foster son's corpse. Now, all of these documents I have in my hand are tips that were sent in to the FBI on Ronnie Hyde after they put out a call for any information in March of 2017. One person actually writing that they knew Ronnie Hyde around the time that he was interacting with Fred Laster said here that they always knew there was something not right with Ron. Reporting in Jacksonville, Julia Janae, First Coast News, on your side.